his head quizzically. You know, if you guys have come down here to try to scare me, then you're doing a piss-poor job. We haven't come down here to scare you, Shy. We've come to warn you, Detective Brown told him in his no-nonsense voice. You're a scumbag, but we're still officers of the law, and as such, we have an obligation to warn you that we have reason to believe your life is in serious danger. Shy was unmoved. And this is supposed to be the part when you tell me that you guys are the only ones who can save me, right? You've got a knack for stating the obvious, my young friend, Detective Brown said. This thing is getting out of hand, and we need to put it to bed. We know somebody is gunning for you, and we're 99% sure of who it is, but we need confirmation from you. Give us a name so we can lock this bastard up, and you can go back to pretending you're Papa Buck. Shy said nothing for a long moment. He looked over at Angelo. Did this motherfucker just ask me to bat? When he turned his back to the detectives, his face was twisted into a mask of rage. How fucking dare you disrespect me by asking me to help you put another man in prison? I'm a Clark, and if you don't know what that means, then I suggest you ask somebody. Now get the fuck out of my establishment before I forget y'all are cops. Shy turned his back on the detectives and leaned against the bar, where he motioned for the bartender to bring him a drink. Did you just threaten a police officer? Detective Brown pushed his blazer back so that his gun was visible and accessible. Shy downed the shot in front of him and turned slowly to face the detectives. That ain't no threat. It's some cold, hard truth. He nodded behind the detectives. The detectives looked around the restaurant. A busboy who had been pretending to clean off a table near where they were talking was now focused on the detectives. He had both his hands hidden in a bucket that was used to clean dirty dishes, but it didn't look like there were any plates in it. At that instant, the kitchen door swung open, and a female line cook stepped out. She had a towel over her arm, but it did little to hide the bulge beneath. The man standing by the front door, he flipped the sign from detectives. Detective Brown's pistol, but Alvarez stopped him short. It would have been stupid for Shy to make such a brazen move against the detectives, but there was no telling what a man backed into a corner would do.
Yo, appreciate y'all subscribing to the channel.
Have it your way, Shy.
Milkman being that mission splashing in the fishbowl. Appreciate y'all.
Keeping Shy and his employees in his line of sight. But when the boogeyman comes knocking at your door, don't dial 911 because we ain't gonna answer. Just as the detectives were leaving, Swans.
You already know, man. Sassy on the back heading down the street. What you got going?
felt like he blacked out. What's that? Animal cupped his hand to his ear. You got something you want to tell me? Money Mike mumbled in the dress to Animal's ear, then brought a broad smile to his face. See, was that so hard? You did good, Mikey. And you should be rewarded. Animal drew the knife back. You said you wouldn't kill me! Money Mike said. And I am a man of my word. Animal told him, before jamming the knife deep into Money Mike's nuts. The pain was so intense that Money Mike couldn't even scream. I ain't gonna kill you, but you'll probably off yourself rather than live the rest of your days with no dick. Thanks for the information. Animal patted Money Mike on the cheek playfully and left him chained to the shower curtain with the knife still dangling from between his legs. The plan was for Alonzo to meet Ashanti in front of the building at sundown, but at the last minute, Ashanti had called him to change the plan. He told Zoe to meet her building at 5. Alonzo got to the park 15 minutes early, and Ashanti was already there, which was unlike him. That boy would be late to his own funeral, but he showed up early for the super secret meeting that he had called. The situation was getting fishier by the minute. He checked to make sure his .45 was loaded and easy to get to if he needed it before he approached Ashanti. What's good? Ashanti stood and extended his hand. Ain't shit. Alonzo pulled him in for an embrace, pressing his body against Ashanti in the process to see exactly where Ashanti had his gun concealed. You want to hit this? Ashanti held out the blunt that he was smoking. I'm good. So what's up, man? Why are we out here in the park? What's so secret that we couldn't talk in front of the building or in one of the apartments? Ashanti looked around suspiciously before answering. Got some real heavy shit on my mind, and it ain't for everybody's ears, feel me? Yeah, I feel you, Alonzo said in an even tone. Shit is getting crazy out here, dog. Ashanti exhaled smoke through his nose. First this thing was shy, and now these two detectives all on a nigga back. I peeped that. What was that all about, fam? Alonzo quizzed him. Ashanti shrugged. You know Brown and Alvarez. They always hint at shit, but never come out and actually say what the fuck they're trying to get at. All they do is talk. And what they want to talk to you about, Ashanti? Murders? Ashanti said, as if it was nothing. They're trying to connect King James to the dead bodies that been popping up. That don't make sense. King keeps a low profile, so how would the police even know to look in his direction? Alonzo reasoned. He was trying to give Ashanti an out. Ashanti looked at him as if it was the dumbest question he'd ever heard. I think we both know the answer to that one. Somebody's talking, Alonzo said. Ashanti nodded. And we know the penalty for betrayal, don't we? Death. Ain't nothing in this world lower than the snitch, and whoever it is running their mouth gotta get pushed off the map, regardless of who it is, Ashanti said matter-of-factly. That's part of what I wanted to talk to you about, Zoe. I got something I need to get off my chest, and I'm not sure how you'll react to it. Only one way to find out, Alonzo said. His voice was calm, point each word of Ashanti's confession. I know you've been wondering about the way I've been acting lately. Ashanti looked up at the stars with his back to Alonzo. Everything just got so crazy so fast that I'm still trying to figure out how it got to this point. Just when you think you've seen it all, the game throws you a twist. I'm in deep, Zoe, real deep, and I ain't sure what to do. What did you do, Ashanti? Alonzo was inching up on his friend with the .45 dangling in his hand. His eyes stung, but he wouldn't let them water. It ain't what I've done that concerns me. It's what I'm doing. I think I've gone too far to turn back, and I'm sorry I have to bring you into it. But I'm in a real bind. I need your help. We need your help. Alonzo paused. Who the hell is we? Ashanti turned around.
Yo.
I can show you better than I can tell you. He nodded behind Alonzo. When Alonzo turned around, he found himself staring down the barrels of 2 rose-colored Glocks. The man holding the weapons cracked a half smile, catching the streetlight on his jeweled teeth. Ashanti. Animal addressed his protege, but kept his eyes and guns on Alonzo. If all your friends greet you with guns, I'd hate to meet your enemies. Alonzo's head whipped back and forth in confusion. Ashanti, what the fuck is going on? So, this is the secret I've been keeping. I don't think you've ever met, but I'm sure you've heard of the big homie animal. I'd seen 2 unlikely things. Himself about to shoot one of his closest friends thinking he was a snitch, and a legend resurrected from the grave. He had heard stories about Animal, his unfortunate rise and fall. But to see him live and in the flesh was almost surreal. His mind was immediately flooded with a million questions. My nigga, what's this all about? Payback, Ashanti told him. He went on to give Alonzo the short version of what brought them to that point, with Animal occasionally filling in blanks. By the time Alonzo finished hearing the tragic story, his head felt like it was spinning. Seems like we ain't the only ones with an axe to grind against the Clarks, Alonzo said. I'm gonna grind more than an axe, Animal assured him. Look, so, we kinda short on time, so I'm gonna keep it as tall with you as I possibly can. We about to jump out the window with no parachutes and get at your man shot. The deck is stacked against us, but at this point, we ain't got much choice other than finishing the game. I understand if you want to step off, and I won't hold it against you. But I wouldn't be mad to have the 2 cats I love the most on both my flanks in this battle. He looked from Animal to Alonzo. Whether you're in or not, this is something I gotta do. Alonzo looked into Ashanti's eyes and saw no fear, only determination. He was about to go against insurmountable odds, and would do it with pride, all because it meant something to his friend. Little Ashanti was a real soldier. Alonzo was sorry he had ever doubted him, and would never make that mistake again. Fuck it. Who wants to live forever anyway, right? What's the game plan? 39. Frankie felt like she had just laid down for her nap when she heard her cell phone ring. She rolled over and plucked it from the nightstand, looking at the caller ID with one eye. She saw Cuddy's name flash across the screen and hit ignore. It had been a long day, and she was tired as hell, so the last thing she wanted to do was chit-chat with anyone, especially him. As soon as her cell stopped ringing, her house phone started. She placed the pillow over her head, trying to drown it out, knowing that it was Cuddy calling again. When the ringing stopped and the answering machine picked up, she heard his gruff voice come through the speaker.
Frankie Angel, I know your ass is up there. I'm in front of your building. We got business to discuss, so bring your ass downstairs so we can talk. You hear me, Frankie? Girlie, if you keep ignoring me, then I'm gonna start leaning on this car horn until you come see what I want, or somebody calls the police. Stop playing with me, Frankie.
He threatened. Frankie let out a long sigh from beneath her pillow. She knew if she continued to ignore Cuddy, he would make good on his threat. With a long growl, she rolled out of bed and prepared to go see what the hell he wanted. When she came out of the building, she was dressed in sweatpants, a bathrobe, headscarf, and wore mismatched fur slippers. Bess and Vashon were sitting in their usual spots on the stoop. Vashon gave her a half-hearted wave, but Bess remained silent. She had been acting like she had an attitude with Frankie ever since she stopped Veronica from taking advantage of Portia. It made things a bit tense with them living in the same building, but Frankie didn't care. The chicks on her block were cool, but she and Portia had broken bread. They had been up together and down together, and that held a lot more weight. Frankie returned Vashon's half-hearted wave and ignored Bess, continuing to Cuddy's truck, which was idling near the curb. Get in, Cuddy nodded in the way of a greeting. Damn, you look like a hood rat. he joked when she was inside the truck. Don't stall with me, Cuddy. I ain't in the mood for it today. Frankie glanced over at locking her heart. Cuddy peeped it too. These bitches giving you trouble? You know I got a few homegirls that'll come through here and tighten them up on the string. You're... Nah, it ain't that serious. So what's so important that you couldn't call instead of coming all the way out here? Frankie asked. She wanted to be rid of Cuddy so she could get back to her much-needed nap. You know I don't do them phones like that. Besides, I had some business out this way at Blood Orchid, he told her. Blood Orchard? What the hell are you doing in there? That's none of your concern, little girl. Anyhow, I came out here to holler at you about putting in some work. You down for that? I'm always down to make some paper. What's the lick? Some old-ass trick need fleecing? She asked. Nah, something a little heavier. I got the plug on a high-stakes card game that's supposed to be going down tonight. Tonight? That's kind of short notice, she said. Normally they case the spot before they hit it, and it was unlike Cuddy to move spontaneously. I know, but when opportunity knocks, you gotta be ready to open the door. There's gonna be a lot of money at that game, and we need it, feel me? Yeah, I feel you, Frankie said uncertainly. Cuddy looked at her. You ain't getting cold feet on me, are you, Frankie? Nah, Cuddy. I'm just thinking about how we gonna pull this off. If the card game is as heavy as you say, I know there's gonna be security. What are we supposed to do? Shoot our way in and out? Frankie, I'm crazy, not stupid. Getting in is the easiest part, especially since we're invited. This bitch-ass nigga uptown who owes me some paper is a guest of this card game. So we'll be rolling in with him. I'm posing as his muscle, and you'll play the role of his pimp and whore. Cuddy laughed. Why I gotta be his whore? Why can't I just be his girl or his chick? Frankie, you could be whatever your mind tells you to be for this caper. As long as you're on time, I could care less. Nigga, you know Frankie Angels is always on time. You just do your part to make sure we ain't walking into no bullshit. I ain't with no cowboy shit, Cuddy. She warned. Frankie, this is easy money, ma. Ain't gonna be nothing but a bunch of old washed up hustlers who think they still got it, and a few young boys hanging around to carry their change purses. Once they see that iron flashing, ain't nobody gonna want no saws. I can't do this without you, Frankie Angels. You with me? Frankie waited. She and Cuddy had been mostly doing cons or high-end rip-offs, and it had been a while since she'd had to point a gun at anybody. A part of her was nervous, but on the other hand, she knew if Cuddy was jumping out the window with less than a day's preparation, there was some heavy paper on the line, and she needed the money. I'm with you, she said. That's my bitch. Cuddy patted her on the leg. Don't play with me, Cuddy. Sorry, I meant my dog. You know I love you, Frankie Angels. She twisted her lips. Love you too, career criminal. Now, if there's nothing else, I'm going back upstairs to get in my bed. She reached for the door handle. He stopped her. Actually, there is. You know, after we talked the other day, it really got me to thinking. You know, about how I've been moving. So does that mean you're finally gonna start treating Jada right? Cuddy frowned. Hell nah, fuck that thieving bitch. Jada's gonna continue to be my doormat until her debt is paid. I was talking about Fatima. I got enough paper put away to where I can slow down for a minute and try to take some time out for her. I've been in prison so long that I really don't know my kid, and I want to change that. Frankie looked at him strangely. You know, until this moment, I'd have never thought you had a heart in that nappy chest of yours. She plucked at one of his chest hairs, peeking up through his shirt. Ouch! He swatted her. See, Here I am trying to have a moment with you, and you want to go fuck it up, just like a woman. Cuddy shook his head. I'm sorry, Cuddy. On the real, I think it's a good idea. Little girls need their daddies, no matter how grown they are. Yeah, Fatima is a wild one. He laughed. I guess the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. I'd really like for you to meet her, too. Frankie smiled. I'd like that. But first, you two spend some time together trying to mend those fences. We can do the introductions after that. Bet. Who knows? Maybe me, you, and Fatima can... Let me stop you before you ruin this little moment, Cuddy. Frankie interrupted. You know I don't shit where I work. I ain't fucking with you like that. Frankie, you act like I'm an ugly nigga or something, he said defensively. No, Cuddy. You're actually very handsome. But that's only on the outside. I know how you think, so I could never fuck with you like that. If you ever tried to treat me like you treat Jada, I'd kill you in your sleep. So let's not even put ourselves through the motions. She got out of the truck. One day, Frankie Angels, he called after her. I doubt it, but you can hold on to hope for as long as you like. She said over her shoulder and sashayed toward her building. As she approached the stoop, she noticed Best and Fashawn staring at her. From the way they suddenly got quiet, she knew they had been talking about her. When Frankie made eye contact with the girls, Fashawn turned her eyes away, but Best kept staring. Frankie didn't do eye battles. She was more into hand-to-hand combat, so she decided it was time to confront Bess and see just where she wanted to go with it. What up? Frankie stood in front of the stoop and addressed the girls. What's going on, Frankie? Rashawn gave her a phony smile. Bess just rolled her eyes. That's what I'm trying to figure out. What's good with you, Bess? Frankie called her out. Ain't shit good with me. Bess snaked her neck. Obviously. Bess reminded her. How if it was... Bess reminded her. How if it was the moon? The rule is universal with me. Frankie shot back. And as far as motherfuckers on this block feeling some type of way for me defending my girl, anybody who wants it knows where to find me. Frankie stepped over the girls and went up the stairs into her building. Frankie was stomping her way up the stairs when Dina opened her apartment door and stepped out. I heard you yelling. Is everything okay? Everything is good. I just had to cheat check these bitches real quick, Frankie said in a huff. Them hoes still tripping over what happened the other day? Dina asked. You know they are. Bess out there talking about people on this block feeling some type of way about me getting in the middle. Like I give a fuck. She's lucky I didn't decide to bust her ass that day, and Harlem could have had a 2-for-1 out here. That Bess is something else. Tina shook her head. Not for nothing. You might want to keep an eye on her ass, Frankie. Bess ain't the toughest bitch in the hood, but she's the sneakiest. That bum bitch don't want no parts of me. If Bess ever try to get out of pocket, I'm gonna mollywop that broad all up and down, Jefferson, Frankie said confidently. Well, just be on point. It would make me feel better. You know I would have to wild out if somebody tried to do something to my Frankie Angels. She reached out to touch Frankie's face, but Frankie pulled away. Chill out, Frankie said, looking around to make sure no one had seen her. Stop being so jumpy, Frankie. Ain't nobody out here but us. Dina took a step forward, and Frankie backed up. What's good with you? Ain't nothing, Dina. I'm just tired and aggravated, Frankie lied. The truth was that Dina was starting to make her feel uncomfortable. She'd initially enjoyed her carefree romps with Dina, but lately, she had been very clingy, and it turned Frankie off. Women with her were more of a vice than a choice, and Dina was starting to crowd her. I can dig that. Well, look. Why don't I run to the store and get us some heroes? We can chill at your crib, relax, and watch a movie, Dina suggested. I'm not really feeling up to it. I'm just gonna go in the crib and crash, Frankie said, continuing to her apartment. Okay, so let's hook up later tonight then, Dina called after her. I wish I could, but I've already made plans. But I'm gonna call you, Frankie promised and closed the door. I'll bet you did, Dina murmured under her breath, thinking of the truck she'd seen Frankie getting out of a few minutes prior. Dina was feeling in a way about how Frankie had brushed her off. The more she thought on it, she realized that Frankie's attitude toward her always changed when she'd seen or spoken to Cuddy, which had been a lot. Dina knew that she and Frankie had agreed that they wouldn't make their fling complicated with feelings, but Dina had no control over her heart. In Frankie, she found the best of both worlds, a BFF and a lover, and the thought of losing that closeness to someone else panicked her, and she feared something bad was about to befall their relationship. Part 4. Love and Gunplay. 40. Animal sat behind the wheel of his trusty rental car, steaming a blunt and listening to the night sounds. Ashanti rode shotgun. He was flicking the safety of the black Mac 11 on and off, deep in his own thoughts. The sound of the safety being clicked over and over again irritated Animal, but he let him be. They were about to ride into a tense situation, and everybody seemed to be on edge, except Alonzo. Animal watched him curiously through the rearview mirror as he moved with almost mechanical precision, loading the big 45, then placed it to the side and began loading his 357. He offered Alonzo one of the machine guns stashed in the truck. He declined, opting for his revolvers. His reasoning was jamming on him in a tight situation. Animal had expected Alonzo to show signs of nervousness, considering they were about to bet a losing hand, but he was the picture of calm. He was almost like a soldier who had seen several tours of duty, but was always ready to sign up for one more. The more time Animal spent around Alonzo, the more comfortable he became with the idea of him riding along. The car was parked in the lot of a small restaurant, which sat right next to a nondescript motel off the 1 and 9 in Elizabeth, New Jersey. For all intents and purposes, it looked like nothing more than a seedy motel where you can get your jollies on for a few dollars an hour. The only thing that betrayed its secret was the luxury cars lined up in the parking lot that night. The address to the motel had been the one Money Mike had whispered in Animal's ear before Animal made him a unit. It was the location of the high roller card game and the place where he and Shy Clark would have their day of reckoning. Damn, you see that bitch? Ashanti got closer to the windshield. He was looking at a caramel-colored woman wearing a skin-tight black dress and thigh-high boots. She strode through the motel parking lot like she owned it. Yeah, she is nice. Alonzo watched the girl, too. That square-ass nigga she with looks like he don't even know what to do with all that ass. Ashanti was speaking of the man walking arm in arm with the girl. He was an older cat wearing a fur that looked like the sleeves were too short. Probably not, Alonzo laughed. As he continued to watch the girl, something about her walk was familiar. He couldn't see her face because it was covered by long black hair and dark sunglasses. Her body language spoke to him. I think I know that wrong, but I can't really tell. Knowing you, you probably smashed, Ashanti teased him. Alonzo shrugged. Hey, don't hate the player. You think they're going to the card game too? Ashanti asked Animal. If I had to guess, I'd say yes. Don't look like homeboy is carrying no laundry in that bag. Animal pointed to a second man who was trailing behind the couple. Ashanti and Alonzo were so preoccupied with the girl that they hadn't noticed the man, but Animal did. He waited until the trio had disappeared inside the motel before giving the nod that he was ready. Let's do this. He grabbed the duffel bag he had packed for the occasion and got out of the car. That's what I'm talking about. No more talking. Time to make these niggas bleed, Ashanti said excitedly, jumping out of the car like a kid who had just arrived at an amusement park. Alonzo simply followed in silence. The three desperados crept across the parking lot like shadows, with Animal leading the way. He peered in the window of the office and saw that there was only one clerk, so he held one finger up to relay it to his crew. Pulling a red bandana over the lower half of his face, Animal stepped into the office. When the desk clerk heard the bell above the door jingle, he looked up from the skin magazine he had been looking at and found himself confronted with three armed men. Ashanti stepped forward and chambered around into the Mac 11. Night, night, nigga. He pointed the machine gun at the frightened desk clerk. What the fuck are you doing? Animal pushed the machine gun away. Ashanti looked at him quizzically. You said I didn't here to slump niggas, so I was gonna slump them. Go ahead and blast them, and not only will you announce our arrival to every cop within a mile, but you'll also end up on the 6 o'clock news, genius. Animal pointed at the overhead camera. He leaned over the desk and knocked the clerk out with a blow to the head from his gun. When he was sure the clerk wouldn't get back up, he turned to Ashanti. Now tuck that hammer until I tell you otherwise, and go get the videotapes out of the back. Ashanti mumbled on his way to the back office to search for the surveillance system. A few minutes later, he came back out holding 3 VCR tapes, which he shoved into Animal's chest before leaving the office. Damn kids. Animal shook his head. I hope I ain't gotta babysit you too. He looked at Alonzo. Alonzo laughed at Animal's statement and headed outside. 3 men crept up the exterior stairs to the 2nd floor of the hotel. They could hear laughter and music the closer they got to the end of the tier. From what Money Mike had told him, they rented 2 rooms for the event. One for the actual game, and the other for the entertainment, which meant pussy and drugs. Animal stopped in front of the room that Mike had told him the players would be in, and set his bag on the ground. He pulled out a railroad spike and a sledgehammer with half the shaft sawed off. He handed the railroad spike to Ashanti and took the sledgehammer. Everybody remember what they're supposed to do? Animal asked his cohorts. Hell yeah! Ashanti leveled the railroad spike with the peephole. Once we cross this threshold, there ain't no turning back. Everything changes. Animal reminded him. Ashanti sucked his teeth. Blood, you know wherever you go, I go. And wherever he goes, I go. Somebody has got to keep his little ass out of trouble. Alonzo joked. That's my brother's keeper. Ashanti gave Alonzo a nod. Now you gonna keep giving speeches, or are we gonna go up in there and lay it down for Gucci? So, you wanna do the honors? Animal secured his grip on the sledgehammer. It would be my pleasure. Alonzo stepped forward and knocked on the door. A few seconds passed, then they heard someone come to the door. Who is it? A voice called from behind the door. Payback, motherfucker! Animal roared and swung the sledgehammer with everything he had. The hammer made contact with the spike, and someone howled in pain on the receiving end. It was officially on. Frankie's legs felt like noodles when she walked through the motel parking lot, and it wasn't because of the thigh-high boots she was wearing either. From the moment they'd set out, the whole situation felt wrong. Cuddy's inside man, her date for the night, was a slightly older man named Davis. In his heyday, he had been a big-time from out of the Bronx, but now he was just another aging street legend who tried to get in where he fit in. Before Cuddy went to prison, he had fronted Davis some work, and when he got locked up, Davis figured that his debt had been wiped clean. Imagine his surprise when Cuddy showed up years later and demanded his money. Davis tried to play Cuddy to the left about the bill's debt, but Cuddy was a man who was serious about his money. And to show Davis how serious he was, Cuddy had paid a visit to his wife. He made it clear to Davis and his family that if he didn't get his money, he would take the debt in blood. Davis had no way of getting Cuddy's money, so Davis offered to turn him on to the high-stakes poker game where Cuddy could get what he was owed and then some. Davis knew what he was doing was risky, but he had no choice. When they got to the motel room where the card game was being held, they were greeted by a young man who was guarding the door. Within the first 5 seconds of opening his mouth, the young man managed to run afoul of Frankie. "Entertainment in the next room, only players here," he told her. "Excuse you?" Frankie cocked her head. "Ain't you one of the dancers?" He held his fingers up in air quotations. "Nigga, you got me fucked up. I ain't no whore." Frankie snapped. She looked at Davis and Cuddy. "I thought you said these were some classy gentlemen, but apparently not when they can't tell the difference between a whore and a boss bitch." "I didn't mean no disrespect. I just thought you were one of the working girls." The young man looked from Frankie's tight dress to her thigh-high boots. Davis stepped up and snaked his hand around Frankie's waist, pulling her closer. "It's a simple mistake, baby. No harm, no foul." He kissed her on the cheek. "Step aside, youngster." Davis brushed the kid away. "I smell money, and I need some of it." He led Frankie and Cuddy into the motel room. Their coats were taken, and they were shown to the table, where Davis was greeted by some of his old street chums. He got plenty of compliments for the fine young girl on his arm, which he soaked up, while palming Frankie's ass to show just how much of the man he was. Frankie rested her head on Davis's shoulder and spoke in a hushed tone. "Don't feel yourself too much. This is only an act. If you grab my ass one more time, I'm gonna say fuck this lady and kill you. I'll be clear on that?" "Crystal clear, baby." Davis wisely backed off. "Watch that temper, Frankie Angels," Cuddy whispered. "You're supposed to be in character, remember?" "Yeah, I remembered." Frankie whipped the hair of her wig and walked off. Davis was shown to a seat at the table with the other card players, while Cuddy helped himself to the bar, and Frankie sat on the love seat in the corner where several other ladies sat passing around a blunt and gossiping. They tried to make small talk with Frankie, but she only half listened. She was too busy watching the room. Cuddy had told her that the card party would be full of old heads who had no real power, but it didn't look that way to her. She knew the look of a killer when she saw one, and she was surrounded by them. Cuddy had walked her into a nest of vipers, and it was too late for her to turn back. When someone knocked on the door, Frankie almost leaped out of her skin. She watched from the love seat as the young man who had insulted her went to answer it. He placed his eye to the peephole and ordered the person on the other side to identify himself. The person outside the door shouted something, followed by a loud boom. The young man screamed in pain and staggered backward, drawing the attention of everyone in the room as blood spurted from his face. He dropped to the ground, writhing in agony, holding his bloody face. Frankie looked up at the door and almost vomited when she saw his eyeball hanging from the end of a spike where the peephole used to be. Before anyone could process what was going on, the whole door crashed in, and two men wearing red bandanas over their faces stormed the room. 41. Animal was the first one through the door, Glock in one hand and sledgehammer in the other. Alonzo followed closely behind, his .357 and .45 sweeping back and forth, daring someone to move. They decided to leave Ashanti out on the tier to cover their backs. Of course, he complained about it, but Animal wouldn't budge on his decision. He didn't want Ashanti's trigger-happy ass to ruin his moment of truth. Animal addressed the room. "I think we all know what this is, so let's make this as painless as possible." An older gentleman who had been sitting near the door leaped to his feet. "You know who the fuck you're trying to rip off?" He snarled at Animal menacingly. Animal swung the sledgehammer one-handed, caving in the side of the man's face, killing him instantly. "Any more dumbass questions?" Animal asked the frightened onlookers. "Get that!" Animal nodded to Alonzo. Alonzo moved over to the table and began scooping the money off it and stuffing it into the duffel bag Animal had used to carry his tools. He could feel the cold stares on the men they were robbing, but he ignored them and focused on collecting every last dollar. He looked over at the ladies on the couch, who were all trembling, except one, the girl who he had seen in the parking lot. The way she was staring at Alonzo made him uneasy. At first, he thought she was looking at his face, trying to figure out who he was behind the mask, but her eyes were fixed on his guns. The light recognition went off in both their heads at the same time. He knew Frankie well enough to know that if she was at the party, it wasn't a social call. It seemed that they had the same agendas, but Alonzo had beat her to the punch. He gave her a knowing wink and continued collecting money. Gentlemen, I don't know you, and this ain't nothing personal. You just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Once I get what I came for, I'll be on my way. You got your money. What more you want? A man wearing a crinkled green suit asked. Shy Clark, Animal informed him. The man in the green suit laughed. Son, seems like you wasted a trip. We don't know no Shy Clark, do we, fellas? He looked around the table. Animal sighed and shot the man in the green suit in the head. Blood splattered all over the table and the man sitting next to him. Look, if y'all want to keep playing with my intelligence, I got enough bullets to put this whole room to sleep. I know this is the Clark card party, so somebody bring me a Clark before I really get upset. He pulled the other Glock from his pants and tapped the pretty bitches together threateningly. No one spoke. That's the way y'all want to do it, huh? Animal began slowly pacing around the room. I tried to be nice. He stopped short of an older Italian man who had been sitting at the card table. Now it's time to be nasty. He pressed both guns against the back of the man's head. A younger Italian man with thick black hair, wearing a tracksuit, jumped from the table. Hey, now you're crossing the line. If you blacks want to kill each other in the streets, that's one thing. But leave us out of it. We're with Gigi. You're gonna be with God if you don't give me who I came here for, Animal assured him. The young Italian man swallowed hard. He had been against coming to the card game, but their boss Gigi had insisted that they attend as a sign of respect to Shy. The young man didn't care that Gigi looked at Shy as an associate. To him and the rest of their organization, he was a nigger street punk, and he wasn't willing to sacrifice one of their own to protect him. Look, the young Italian man began. This is Shy Clark's game, but he ain't here. Well then, who the fuck is running this circus? Animal asked. Suddenly, the sound of shattering glass came from the bathroom. Without having to be told, Alonzo darted to the back to investigate. He returned a few seconds later with a worried expression on his face. Somebody bolted out the bathroom window. I'm gonna dip outside to see if I can catch whoever it was. Don't bother. Ashanti walked into the room with the Mac 11 jammed to the back of the man who tried to escape. Look who I caught trying to make a break for it. Animal smiled from ear to ear behind his bandana at the sight of who Ashanti had captured. Nice of you to join us, Swan. Tiana was just coming back from the vending machines with an armful of snacks for Gucci and her. She was glad to see her friend getting her appetite back, because it meant that she was one step closer to getting back to where she needed to be. What Gucci had gone through would have broken most people, but the fact that she was pulling through it was a testament to her strength. The physical wounds would take a while to heal, and the mental ones even longer, but no matter how long it took, Tiana would be by her side. She and Gucci got older, their problems got bigger, but that only made their bond stronger. When Tiana was asked out with nothing but the clothes on her back, Gucci and her mom had been right there for her, even going as far as letting Tiana and her two sons move in with Miss Ronnie when Don B had her apartment burned down. Tiana and Gucci were more than friends. They were sisters. Tiana entered Gucci's hospital room, smiling from ear to ear because the vending machine had her favorite toasted almond ice cream snacks, but the smile faded when she saw two men standing over Gucci's bed. At first she thought they were the detectives who had come back to ask more questions about the shooting, but that thought faded when she saw one of them injecting something into Gucci's IV. What are y'all doing? You're not supposed to be here! Tiana yelled, trying to draw the attention of the hospital. Grab that bitch! One of the men ordered. Tiana turned and tried to run, but was grabbed roughly by her hair and dragged into the room. The man tried to close the door, but Tiana stuck her foot in the door jamb to stop him. He slammed the door repeatedly on Tiana's foot to try to get her to remove it, but she wouldn't. She knew if that door closed, they were finished, so he was going to have to break her foot to get her to move it. But instead, he was a slightly older, brown-skinned man wearing a gray suit and a black tie, white shirt. Now, why you want to stir up trouble unnecessarily? Angelo asked with a shake of his head. What are you doing to her? Gucci mumbled groggily from her bed. Whatever Angelo had put in the IV was starting to kick in, but she wasn't too far gone yet to know that something wasn't right. Don't you worry your pretty little head about it, doll. Once that cocktail kicks in, this will be the least of your concerns. Angelo patted Gucci's leg. Whatever you're thinking about doing to her, you better unthink it or else, Tiana threatened. Or else, what? Big bad animal gonna come for me? Angelo asked. I sure hope so, because if he don't, that means I wasted a trip, and you bitches are dead. What do you want? Gucci asked. She was starting to see double. We want your boyfriend, and you're gonna give him to us. Angelo handed Gucci a cell phone. Gucci laughed weakly. Fuck you. Angelo grabbed her by the neck and shook her. Bitch, I ain't playing games with you. Now either you get on the phone and call that nigga, or I'm gonna put a crease in your brain. He placed his gun to the top of her head. Gucci was frightened, but she wouldn't give the men the satisfaction of showing it. If they'd come for Animal, then 9 times out of 10, she and Tiana would be killed anyway. The two things she regretted most was that she was going to lose Animal again, and the fact that her love had condemned her best friend to death with her. Gucci pursed her dry lips together like she was trying to say something, and when Angelo leaned in to hear what it was, she spat in his face. When you kill me, it's gonna start the shot clock on the rest of your worthless ass life, because Animal's
bro.
kill
What the fuck
you.
you doing, nigga?
Angelo wiped the saliva from the side of his face with Gucci's
No,
neck.
bro, what the fuck you doing?
If you like it, I love it. He cocked the hammer back on the gun. Wait! Tiana cried out. She can't be an animal, but I can. You? Angelo asked curiously. Tiana, don't! Gucci pleaded with tears in her eyes. Gucci, they're gonna kill us if we don't, Tiana said, her eyes also filled with tears. He gave me a number to reach him at, but he'll only pick up if I call from this phone. She handed Angelo the phone. How could you? Gucci cried, looking at Tiana in disbelief. I'm sorry, Gucci, but I'm doing this for us. I don't want to die. Tiana tried to explain. She looked at her pleading friend, and her heart broke. Gucci may have seen what she was doing as betrayal, but Tiana saw it as their best chance at survival. Then let's get Mr. Loverman on the line. Angelo hit send on the phone. Animal eyeballed Swan like he was a porter's steak that had just been set before a starving man. The beef between Swan and Animal went back even further and deeper than the one between him and Shy. At one time, Swan had been a comrade in odds, and to an extent, even considered a brother, but somewhere along the path he had lost his way. When he murdered Tech on the word of an outsider, Shy Clark, it put him out of favor, but most were hesitant to touch him because of his affiliation with the Clarks. Animal had no such reservations. He had come for Shy Clark, but Swan was a welcome consolation prize. With eyes still locked on Swan, Animal spoke to the room. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have no affiliation with the Clark family and you don't wish to die, please take this time to leave with my sincere apologies. But if you're loyal to these traitorous rats and have a problem with what I'm about to do to old Swan, then feel free to stick around and we can settle up. Yes, indeed, Alonzo co-signed, holding his two revolvers. All at once, men and women spilled out of the hotel room in a near stampede. Alonzo watched Frankie and a dark-skinned dude exchange heated words in the corner. It looked like she was trying to urge him to leave, and he wanted to stay. Alonzo gave Frankie a get the fuck out of here look, hoping that she could convince her friend to do the same. There was no doubt in his mind that Animal meant to kill anyone who remained, and he didn't want Frankie to be among that number. Finally, she got her two male guests to move for the exit. On the way out, the one who had been holding back looked over at Alonzo and smirked. Alonzo didn't think that Frankie would be foolish enough to let her friend in on their secret, but he planned to look into that later and deal with all parties accordingly. Slowly, Animal walked over to Swan, pulling his bandana from his face so Swan could see just who he was up against. Long time no see. Blood. Animal said the last word as if it left a foul taste in his mouth. Not long enough, if you ask me. Swan put it. The deck was stacked against him, but regardless, he was a gangster. It wouldn't fold. I hear you've been busy. If you call pushing your pussy-ass team off the Earth business, then I guess so. Animal replied. Blood, do you know how long I've dreamt of this moment? Not hardly as long as I have. You know, when Shy had me put Tech in his place, I told him that we needed to whack you out too, but he didn't listen. He should have, Animal told him. You know, for years I've looked at the little rift in our family from every angle, and I still haven't been able to figure out what made you betray your homies. Swan shook his head. All these years you still don't get it, which is why you niggas will always be the low men on the totem pole. Me killing Tech wasn't about betrayal. It was about maintaining order. No matter how many times y'all were born, you continue to run around like rabid dogs, killing and taking what you wanted. And that wasn't good for business. So you call killing a nigga a business decision? Animal scowled. No, I call it tender mercy. Better I killed him clean than Shy sending somebody to make a mess out of him like he's gonna do with you. You should have stayed in hiding, Animal. Ironically, I probably would have, but you crossed the line when you let your people let Gucci fall under his bullet, Animal told him. Swan laughed. I heard this was all over a bitch, but I gave you more credit than that, Animal. I could have respected you if you'd come back to avenge your homie, but you're throwing your life away over a bitch. And you wonder why you'll always be looked at as a little nigga. Animal punched Swan in the face, sending him crashing into the turntable. This little nigga is hard, don't he? He yanked Swan to his feet. Animal fired another fist into Swan's face, bloodying his nose. Who do you think you're talking to? Animal slapped Swan viciously across the face with one of his guns. You got Shy thinking you're the supreme street general, but that's because he don't know you as good as he thinks he does. Animal slapped him with the gun again. He pressed Swan against the wall and crammed his Glock into his mouth. Beneath that gangster persona, I know your true face, and so did Tech, which is why you were so willing when the order came down to kill him. You went through a lot to protect your secret, but maybe I'll tell it after I body you. The feeling of his cell phone vibrating in his pocket gave Animal pause. Swan's eyes went from Animal's face to his vibrating pocket and back again. If I were you, I'd answer that. He mumbled a Glock that was shoved firmly in his mouth. Animal was going to ignore the but it could have only been one person, and if she was calling, then something might have been wrong. Keeping his gun in Swan's mouth, he slipped it from his pocket and placed it to his ear. What you need, T? I kinda got my hands full right now. I got my hands full too. Wanna guess what I'm holding? A masculine voice said on the other end of the line. Who the fuck is this and where's my girl? Animal roared into Angelo's ear. Tisk, tisk, such language. Angelo taunted him. Your shorty is good, but now, how long she stays that way is on you, little homie. On everything I love, if you touch her, I'm gonna hunt you down and make you wish your mama had swallowed you. Animal promised. I don't doubt that you'd give it the old college try, but for as long as I got your bitch, you ain't gonna do shit but shut your fucking mouth and listen. Angelo barked. You thought that shit you were doing running around town was real cute, did you? Instead of keeping your head in the sand like a good little ostrich, you're strutting around Harlem like a peacock. You wanted our attention. Well, little nigga, you got it. Our friend wants to have a chat with you. That bitch-ass nigga Cheyenne, no friend of mine. And the only thing we got to say to each other will be said over gun smoke. Animal Cat. You got something of mine, and I got something of yours. You touch one hair on Gucci's head, and I'm gonna blow Swan's motherfucking brains out, you dig? Angelo sighed. You still think you're calling the shots, huh? Angelo put the phone on speaker. You listening, little fella? What are you playing at? Animal asked nervously. I ain't playing at shit. I'm actually quite serious, and I'm about to show you how serious I am. Hey, yo! Angelo called to his henchman. Since these bitches think they're so fly, let's see if they got wings. The henchman smiled and dragged Tiana to her feet. She tried to put all of her weight down so he couldn't move her, but she was too light in the ass. He dragged her like a rag doll over to the hospital window and held her in front of it so she could see the street far below. Please don't! Gucci called out frantically. Hearing her voice made Animal panic. Don't you do it! Animal said in almost a pleading tone. If you want to roll with the big dogs, then you need to know how it feels to get bit. Angelo spat venomously at the phone. Do that, bitch! He ordered his henchman. You ain't gonna do this! Tiana clung to the henchman for dear life. Sorry, shorty. I got my orders. He took a step back and kicked Tiana as hard as he could, sending her through the window like a battering ram and into the cool night air. Gucci! Animal howled when he heard the scream from the phone. It was a sound so eerie that it would stick with him for the rest of his days. He stood there with the phone glued to his ear in shock. He was so numb that he couldn't do much other than stand there. Animal turned his tear-filled eyes to Swan, and Swan knew that it was over for him. Your boy just forfeited your life, homie. Oh! He heard Gucci's voice coming through the phone softly. Animal's face lit up. Gucci? He pressed the phone harder to his ear so he could hear her. Baby, I thought... Are you okay? Animal, I don't know what's going on. These guys... Tiana is dead. Gucci mumbled. The cocktail Angelo had given her was kicking in, and she could barely stay awake. Help me, baby. Gucci, I'm coming for you! Animal declared. Ain't that sweet? Angelo was back on the phone. But we'll probably be gone by then. My peoples wants to have a conversation with you. And this little sweet piece of candy will make sure you play nice when you show up. They had Animal by the balls. He knew that whatever scenario laid out for him was a death trap. But what choice did he have? If he had to give his life for Gucci's, he'd do it readily. Name your terms. I'm gonna holler at you later on with an address. You show up, alone, and your bitch walks. You play games, and I'm gonna clap her pretty ass. Sound fair to you? Angelo asked. Animal reluctantly agreed. I'll be waiting for your call. But my nigga, you better turn her over the same way you found her, or I'm gonna make you wear that. Don't worry, I ain't gonna let my niggas deflower this whore. You do your part, we'll do ours. Angelo assured him. Oh, and before I forget, cut my partner loose. If Swan doesn't call me in 3 minutes to let me know he's good, all bets are off. Not only am I gonna kill this bitch, but I'm gonna make sure I fuck her until she bleeds on my dick first. The pussy gotta be the bomb if your dust was willing to commit suicide over it. Angelo laughed and ended the call. Animal looked at the silent phone as if it was the most vile thing he had ever seen. He had so many emotions running rampant inside him that his chest swelled to the point where he felt like it would pop. Alonzo and Ashanti were looking at him, waiting for word of what the next move was, but he couldn't even form his lips to tell them what he'd just learned. He happened to look up and catch Swan giving him a smug look. Fuck you smirking at, Animal snarled. Swan held up his hands. Don't pay me no mind, blood. As a matter of fact, it's about time I take my leave of you, ain't it? You know my nigga Angelo is a stickler for time. He chuckled. Animal felt his body begin to tremble from the mounting rage. The more he stared at the half-smirk on Swan's face, the angrier he got. You got that, Swan. Animal placed his guns on the table. But before you dip, let me give you something to look forward to for the next time we meet. Instantly, Animal hit Swan flush in the mouth. Swan tried to throw his hands up to defend himself, but Animal was relentless in his onslaught of punches. Swan was so disoriented that he tripped over his own feet and fell into the waiting arms of Alonzo and Ashanti. What's good, big homie? You ready to earth this nigga? Ashanti asked, jamming the Mac 11 into Swan's ribs. He was so thirsty to murk him that a trail of slobber escaped over his bottom lip. No, let him go, Animal said, not believing his own words. Ashanti looked at him as if he had lost it. You can't be fucking serious! Swan is the root of Shot's. We killed this nigga and we crippled the clocks! Gucci, homie, Animal confessed. Let him go. Hurt crossed Ashanti's face. That's how y'all playing? Ashanti looked at Swan in disgust. Swan was leaning against the wall, wiping the blood from his mouth with the sleeve of his shirt. Time is ticking, fellas, he snickered. I'm gonna see you again, blood, Animal told Swan. Not if I see you first, Swan said before slipping from the motel room. Why do I feel like a rape victim right now? Alonzo spoke up. He knew what was at stake, and he knew what it meant to let Swan walk. If he wasn't before, he was definitely a marked man now. You ain't the only one feeling in a way about this. They already killed Tiana and got Gucci hostage. Animal filled them in. Damn, these niggas playing dirty, Ashanti said sadly. Shy wants me to meet. In exchange, they'll let Gucci go. You know it's a setup, don't you? Alonzo answered. Yeah, but I ain't got a whole lot of choices right now. I left Gucci hanging once, and I can't do it again. But right now, Shy's cool. Fam, I can't sit by and watch you throw yourself to dogs like that, Ashanti said emotionally. He couldn't lose his big brother again so soon. Animal smirked. Baby boy, you should know me better than that. Me and Shy gonna have our meeting, but I plan on walking out of that motherfucker with my lady and on my own 2 legs. Well, if you got a plan, I'm listening, Alonzo told him. Animal nodded. I got a plan, but I doubt if y'all like it. 42. Frankie was quiet for the whole ride back to New York. Cuddy was going on and on about the masked bandits beating them to the lick and what he was going to do to Davis if he didn't find a way to get him the money he owed. Frankie was only half listening. She was too busy thinking about how close they'd come to dying. Frankie had seen people killed before. She had even taken a life to protect her own. But the motel slayings were different. The lead bandit was ruthless and killed without conscience. There was no doubt in her mind that he had been belched out from the very pits of hell to do the devil's work, which raised a nagging question in the back of her mind. What was Alonzo doing with him? Had it not been for his choice in weapons, he probably wouldn't have never suspected it was him. But there were very few people who handled cannons so well. They had always been Alonzo's calling card. She knew Alonzo was dabbling in the streets. But if he was robbing Shy Clark and murdering recklessly, then he had slipped further back into his old ways than anyone thought. She wondered if she should tell Portia or just mind her own business. Either way, she planned to confront Alonzo about it. The last thing she wanted was her friend getting caught in the middle of some shit that Alonzo had stirred up. Frankie, do you hear me? Cuddy drew her out of her thoughts. What? Frankie asked with an attitude. We're here! He nodded to her building, which they had just pulled up in front of. What the hell is your problem? You've been in a pissy mood the whole ride back. Let's see. Frankie tapped her chin. You say we're going to pull an easy caper, but you walked me into a room full of killers that would have probably murdered us if we'd gone through with it. Then to top it off, you neglect to mention that somebody else was planning to rob the joint too. So what the fuck do you think my problem is, Cuddy? Jesus, we almost tried to rob Shy Clark. Do you know what he would have done to us if we had? Frankie lowered her head in her hands. You act like this is my fault. I didn't know whose party it was, he told her. Did you bother to check? Of course you didn't, because you were too worried about getting paid. I told you this felt wrong from the beginning, but you wouldn't listen. Hold on now. Don't try to act like I put a gun to your head and made you run up in there with me. All I did was present the opportunity. You're right, Frankie. I should have done more research instead of going off on Davis's word. But even if I had found out it was Shy's party, that don't mean we wouldn't have tried to rip it off anyway. Then you're a damn fool. Fucking with people like Shy is suicide, she said. Try telling that to them 3 niggas who are right now sitting somewhere, very much alive, counting our paper. I gotta admit, those were some cold young killers. You see the way the leader blew off old boy's head? Reminds me of myself when I was in my 20s, Cuddy said proudly. I can't believe you're idolizing them for almost killing us, Frankie said in disbelief. They wasn't gonna kill us. You heard what he said? They were looking for Shy. Besides, I have a feeling regardless of what might have happened, we were going to walk out of there untouched. At least you would have, he told her. What the hell is that supposed to mean? Cuddy turned to her. I saw something pass between you and the cat holding the revolvers. I'm not sure what it was, but I know there was something. Cuddy, you're bugging, Frankie lied. She didn't think anyone saw, but apparently Cuddy did. We really gonna play this game? Cuddy eased his gun onto his lap. He didn't point it at Frankie, but he made sure she saw it. Most people would have chalked somebody robbing our robbery was a coincidence, but I don't believe in those. Then when I saw the funny business between you two, a thought entered my head. Maybe they showed up to rob that card game because somebody tipped them off. What are you trying to say to me, Cuddy? Frankie asked defensively. I'm not trying to say anything to you, Frankie. I'm asking you a question. Did you tip them boys off about the card game? Hurt flashed across Frankie's face. I can't believe you just asked me that. Granted, she was lying about knowing one of the robbers, but she would never betray Cuddy. Bet I'd come out and ask you than the alternative, right? He glanced down at the gun on his lap. Are you threatening me? Frankie looked from the gun to Cuddy. No, I'm waiting for you to answer my question. You know what? I don't need this shit. Go fuck yourself, Cuddy. Frankie spat. She opened the door to get out of the truck, but Cuddy grabbed her arm roughly and snatched her back inside. He yanked Frankie's head back, pinning her to the seat, and pressed his gun under her chin. With a fist full of Frankie's hair, he snarled in her face. Look here, little girl. Don't think because I got love for you I won't paint the inside of this whip with your brains if you're trying to put shit on me. Now I'm gonna ask you one more time. Did you cross me for them niggas? Cuddy, we're partners. I would never cross you. She pleaded. I've seen brother turn against brother in the name of $1, so I don't put nothing past nobody. Did you tip them niggas? He repeated. Frankie was frantic. She tried to think of something, anything that would guarantee she would meet her end in that truck. How could I tip them off if I didn't even know where the game was until we got there? Remember? Cuddy studied her face for a few minutes before releasing her. Okay. Frankie wiped the tears from her eyes with her hands. You accuse me of betraying you and shoving a gun into my throat, and all you've got to say is okay? Look, I'm sorry, Frankie. I didn't mean to hurt you, but I had to make sure you were on the up and up. You can't take chances with anyone, even the ones you love. This is a cold game we're playing, baby girl. Too cold for me. What the hell does that mean? Cuddy asked. I'm out, Frankie told him. Frankie, I think you're overreacting. No, overreacting would be me waiting to catch you slipping and killing you for what you did. This is just me knowing when to throw in the towel. Frankie got out of the truck. Wait a second, we had an arrangement, Cuddy reminded her. Don't worry, I'll get the rest of your money, she assured him. I don't know how. You jump ship on me, and ain't no other crew in the city gonna work with you, Cuddy threatened. Then I'll get a job. I'll get 2 jobs if I have to. I just want you out of my hair and my life. She slammed his door. You can't just walk away, Frankie, Cuddy called out the window. Watch me. She turned and stayed toward her building. Dina had been dozing off when she heard Frankie's raised voice out her window. She had been waiting for her all night to tell her what she had heard through the grapevine. She looked outside and saw Cuddy's truck idling at the curb. She couldn't see very well through the heavily tinted windows, but from the way the truck was rocking, they were either fighting or fucking, and neither sat well with Dina. Jumping into her sweatpants, she grabbed her trusty baseball bat by the door and headed downstairs. She was just coming out of the building when Frankie was getting out of the truck. She was surprised by the vulgar outfit Frankie was wearing, but more surprised to see Frankie crying. In all the time she'd known her, she couldn't even remember seeing Frankie cry. You okay? Dina asked, meeting Frankie halfway. I'm good. Frankie brushed past her. Frankie, I need to talk to you, Dina told her. Not now. Frankie never broke her stride. But it's important. Dina grabbed her by the arm. Frankie spun, and in a fit of anger and hurt, took out her frustrations toward Cuddy on Dina. What the fuck is your problem? I said not now, so why don't you just let it go and leave her the fuck alone? She snatched away from Dina and continued into the building. She hadn't meant to be so sharp with Dina, but she was going through a lot and wasn't thinking straight at the moment. Dina stood there, feeling the tears welling up in her eyes. Frankie, speaking to her like that, heard words that she had found out that Lazy was cheating on her back in the days. She really liked Lazy, but she was in love with Frankie. Dina looked up and saw Cuddy eyeing her like she was a piece of meat. His gaze made her feel dirty. Why you looking at me like that? You want to get in and maybe hang out for a while? Cuddy asked her, as if he hadn't just threatened to kill her lover less than 5 minutes prior. Not if my ass was on fire and you had the last extinguisher on Earth. She stuck her middle finger up at Cuddy and walked into the building. Cuddy shook his head. All these bitches are crazy, he mumbled and pulled off. By the next day, news of the Shy's card game getting robbed was all over the streets. Everybody was whispering about the masked bandits who had the audacity to stick the boss of bosses and the handsome bounty placed on their heads. Shy had offered $50,000 apiece for the bandits and $100,000 for the man who had led them. It was safe to say that Alonzo had finally made it to the big times, but how long he lived to celebrate his newfound notoriety remained the question. Animal had assured them that Shy would be so focused on him that Alonzo and Ashanti were safe, but it didn't make Alonzo sleep any easier. It was as if at every turn he expected one of Shy's soldiers to jump out and try to finish him, but as of yet, it hadn't happened. For the moment, they were safe, but deep down, each of them knew it was only a matter of time for the other shoe to drop. It was too late to worry about it at that point, however. All he could do was wait and see how it would play out. A knock on his front door brought Alonzo to his feet. He pulled on a tank top and got 357 from the table and tiptoed to the door. With his gun at the ready, he peered through the peephole to see who it was. When he saw the smiling face on the other side, he hid the gun on the bookshelf and opened the door. Portia stepped into his apartment looking good enough to eat. She was wearing a green tennis skirt with a white polo shirt and some white and green Stan Smiths. Think it took you long enough to answer the door? I was starting to think you might have been in here with another chick, Portia said playfully and invited herself in. Knock it off. Alonzo shoved her in the back playfully. And you got a lot of nerve complaining about how long it took me to open the door when I called you to come over almost 2 hours ago. What took you so long? I had to stop off and get ready for you. She held up her freshly manicured nails that were painted green and white to match the outfit. Besides, I had to get the latest gossip from those nosy efforts. What's the good word? Alonzo didn't care much for that, but he was curious to see what people were saying. Well, Portia sat on the couch and crossed her oiled legs. Everybody is talking about what happened at Harlem Hospital last night. Harlem Hospital? What the hell happened there? He had been expecting her to bring up the robbery. Boy, you got that big-ass television and don't watch the news? She nodded to the flat screen mounted on the wall, then picked up the remote and turned the television to New York 1. They were just in time to catch the recap of the murder that had everyone talking. Alonzo watched in shock as the news anchor recounted the events of the night before. The way they were spinning it, a girl from Harlem had been visiting her mentally unstable friend in the hospital when apparently they'd gotten into an argument over a man. The argument turned physical and ended with one of the girls falling from the window to her death. Whether it was an accident or foul play was unclear, but the missing patient was now a person of interest in the case. Alonzo was too stunned to speak. The murder of the young girl was a sad thing, but the obvious con job that was being run on the American public was even sadder. Gucci was fresh out of a coma with a bullet to the stomach. There was no way she was pushing anybody out of the window. Even at full strength, the two girls had been like sisters, and there was no way anybody who knew them was buying into it. But the general public believed what the news reported to them. Shy had obviously gotten to the media and flexed his muscle. The fact that he had that kind of reach taught Alonzo a newfound respect for his opponent. Ain't that some sad shit? Portia shook her head. Yeah, fucking tragic, Alonzo said, trying to shake off the shock. Other than that, what have you been up to, besides holding down your reputation as being the finest little motherfucker in Harlem? He sat on the couch next to her. Just Harlem? Portia crossed her arms defensively. It would have amounted to the same thing had I said the world, because Harlem is the world to me. It's the only one I know. Portia smiled. How come you always know the right things to say? Because when I speak to you, I speak from the heart. He took her hand and placed it over his chest. It keeps it 100, even when the brain doesn't want to. Portia let her hand linger on his chest, appreciating the firmness of it. His heart beat rapidly under her palm like a scared teenager about to go on his first date. The rapid thumping in his chest beat in time with the thumping of her own because she felt it too. There was a natural rhythm between them. You play too much. Portia moved her hand and scooted further down the couch. How is it that I'm the one playing when you're the one doing all the running? Alonso closed the distance. Damn, Portia. She gathered her purse and headed for the door. I'm sorry. I don't want you to be sorry. I want you to be considerate. And that's what I've been trying to say from the beginning. Thanks for the nutso. I'll see you around. She left the apartment. Nice seeing you again, love. La Kim said sarcastically to Portia as she passed him in the hall. Portia just rolled her eyes and kept it moving. Yo, wasn't that shorty from Brick City? La Kim asked Alonso after Portia had gone. Please don't piss on my parade any further. Alonso sighed. What the fuck does King want to talk about that's so urgent anyway? Murder. What else? 44. Frankie woke with her mouth feeling like she had gargled with sand and a splitting headache, no doubt from Cuddy pulling her hair. She was shocked and hurt that he had carried her like that, but she didn't know why she was. She saw Cuddy treat Jada like shit, and she was the mother of his child, so it was foolish to think that the snake wouldn't turn and bite her one day. Fuck him, Frankie said and rolled out of bed. She grabbed her cell phone from the dresser and saw that she had 14 missed calls and several voicemails. Cuddy had called her a few times, and Portia once, but the rest were from Tina. Frankie recalled the way she had spoken to Tina and felt bad. Frankie had been meaning to have a talk with Tina for a while, but hadn't gotten around to it. She was cool as hell, but becoming way too possessive, and Frankie didn't need any more complications in her life. She intended on breaking it to her gently, but Dina caught her at the wrong time, and all the resentment came out in a wave instead of a trickle. She had gone way too hard on Dina, and would make it her business to apologize to her. Before calling Dina back, Frankie decided to check in with her. Of course, Portia had given her an earful of the latest gossip, but what really shocked her was when Portia revealed the details of her encounter with Alonzo. I knew your hot ass would give in sooner or later, Frankie smiled. Shut up, Portia giggled on the other end of the phone. I didn't go over there to sleep with him, but one thing led to another, and you know. Well, I need to know all the nasty details. How was it? Frankie asked excitedly. It was beautiful, right up until the point when he left me with a soaked pussy and feeling like a $2 whore, Portia said with a sigh. She went on to fill in the blanks about how Alonzo had left her hanging when La Kim came for him. You want to talk about killed him and his cock-blocking ass brother. That's messed up. Well, I know the next time y'all get up, you're gonna put it on him. Ain't gonna be no next time, Frankie. Never in my life have I had a man jump out of this sweet pussy and rush off because he had something better to do. I ain't fucking with Alonzo. Maybe it was important and he had to leave. You might be overreacting a bit, Portia. What do you mean, overreacting? Do you know what kind of blow that was to my self-esteem? This is the reason why I didn't want to get emotionally attached to Zoe in the first place. I'm not doing this to myself, Frankie. I can't. Frankie could tell that her friend was hurting, and she hurt for her. Portia acted like she wasn't, but she was really into Alonzo, and anyone with eyes could see that he was into her, too. Frankie knew that if Zoe rushed out suddenly with La Kim, then it had to be tied into his extracurricular activities. She'd said she would confront Alonzo before telling Portia his secret, but the truth might have been the only thing that could save their promising relationship. Portia, before you do something you might regret, I need to holler at you about Alonzo, Frankie told her. What, he got another bitch? I knew that nigga was foul. Portia fumed. Nah, it's nothing like that. It's just, I don't want to have this conversation on the phone. What are you doing in a couple of hours? Sitting in my house wondering why I have such poor judgment when it comes to men? After I get dressed, I'm gonna come uptown to check you. Don't do anything until we talk, Frankie told her. Okay, but whatever you have to say better be damn good, because I'm 2 seconds from calling him and cursing him out. Just hold your head until I get there. Frankie ended the call. Frankie quickly showered and began to get dressed. She threw on a feline sweatsuit with the matching sneakers. She didn't have time to do her hair, so she just threw on a fitted cap and kept it moving. On her way out of the door, her cell phone went off. She looked at the screen and saw it was Dina's name. She hit ignore. She would talk to her when she came back from delivering the news to Portia. Feeling like she was about to save the world, Frankie set out to start her journey uptown. When she came out of the building, she found Bess and Fashawn sitting on the stoop with the 2 guys she had seen before but didn't know. The way they were spread out, there was no way for Frankie to come down the stairs. She waited for them to notice her and move, but they acted like they didn't notice her at all. Excuse y'all, Frankie said with an attitude. My bad, little mama, one of the dudes said, looking up at her. Thank you, Frankie said, and descended the last few steps. As she passed, she felt the dude grab her ass. Soft as cotton, he laughed. Frankie didn't even reply. She just punched the dude in the face. He tried to get up, and she rocked him twice more. His friend grabbed her from behind and locked her arms over her head in a full Nelson. She struggled, but the dude was too strong. Frankie watched in horror as Bess stepped in front of her and extended a long box cutter. You punk bitch! You couldn't see me in a fair one! Frankie shouted. Guess we'll never know, will we? Bess laid the box cutter against Frankie's throat. Maybe this will teach you that it ain't where you're from, it's where you're at. She ripped the blade across Frankie's neck. Dina came out of the corner store just in time to see Bess and the others scatter from in front of the building. She shook her head, wondering what kind of fuckery the 2 stoop rats had stirred up. When she reached her building, she found out. Oh my God! Dina dropped the bag of groceries. She had to be so hard-headed, Frankie. I've been trying to tell you that they were going to get at you, but you never had time to listen to me. She sobbed. Why'd they do this to me? Frankie croaked. She was now bleeding from her mouth, too. Don't talk. It's going to be okay. We're going to get you some help. Dina placed her hand over Frankie's throat, trying to stop the bleeding. Somebody help! Help us! Dina roared, but no one stirred. She knelt on the stoop next to her lover, wailing as she was forced to helplessly watch Frankie bleed out onto the stairs. 45. Alonzo had expected La Kim to drive back to the projects where King held counsel, but instead, he jumped on the FDR and headed downtown. He tried quizzing his brother about the big meeting, but all he could get out of him was, King will explain when we get there. Generally, La Kim couldn't wait to boast on whatever plans they had brewing, but he was tight-lipped about this one, which immediately raised Alonzo's antennas. He and La Kim had come from the same womb, so the thought of his brother betraying him never entered his mind, but he didn't like going into situations blindly, no matter who was leading him. Their journey ended in a housing project on the Lower East Side, where they parked and headed inside the projects. Alonzo wasn't familiar with that particular project, but he could tell that La Kim had been there more than a few times by the way he expertly navigated the maze. The brothers ventured deeper into the heart of the projects to a playground. There were a group of men loitering on the playground. Some he recognized and some he didn't. Off to the side, he spotted Ashanti. When they made eye contact, Ashanti gave Alonzo a look that he didn't like. King James stood off to the side, speaking to a Spanish cat. When he noticed La Kim and Alonzo into the park, he excused himself and moved to intercept them. Peace, peace. King gave La Kim that, then Alonzo. What's good, King? Alonzo greeted him. You tell me. We ain't seen too much of you lately, King said. Alonzo shrugged. I've been around, just lying low like you told us to. So I've noticed. I guess it ain't been too hard for you to get MIA since you've been so preoccupied lately, huh? Alonzo was thrown by the question. What do you mean by that? He asked King, but his eyes involuntarily cut to Ashanti, who had just joined them. I'm talking about your shorty. You've been kicking it heavy with that joint from Brick City, haven't you? Alonzo was both relieved and surprised. How'd you know? King smirked. Come on, God. You know I make it a point to know what my peoples are up to at all times. So what's up? I know you didn't call me all the way down here to ask me about my love life. What are we doing here? And what's up with all them Germans? Alonzo was speaking of the Spanish cats who were out there with them. We're holding a war council. What does it look like? King motioned to the hardened faces congregating around them. It seems as if things have heated up unexpectedly. Somebody had shot Clark's card game last night. You heard about that? King stared at Alonzo as if he could see directly into his soul. Alonzo hesitated. Yeah, I heard about it. The whole hood is talking about it. These cats had to be some real cowboys or real stupid to disrespect shots blatantly. Now I'd love for our team to take the credit for something so brazen, but I know none of my young boys would jump out the window like that. Especially without my approval. Would they? Alonzo opened his mouth to say something, but King James stopped him with a raised finger. Before you answer, King James continued, just know that loyalty and honesty are all I've ever asked or expected in exchange for eating off my plate. Alonzo started to gamble on a lie, but when he saw the hurt look in King's eyes, he couldn't bring himself to do it. I took the spot, he confessed. King shook his head as Alonzo confirmed what he already knew. So are you fucking stupid? If I was able to find out you were there, how many other motherfuckers do you think placed you at the scene? Do you know what shot Clark is gonna do if he finds out you were there? Then he's gonna have to do it to both of us because I was there too. Ashanti stepped forward. King looked at the two of them as if they had both lost their minds. It's a fucking mutiny! He threw his hands up in frustration. I hear there were 3 of you. Who was the other cat? Just some nigga I was locked up with, Alonzo lied. King didn't look like he believed him, but that was the story he intended to stick to. Who's to say this clown y'all rode out with decides to start running his mouth? King asked. Nah, niggas like him don't break, Ashanti assured. You willing to bet your life on it? Absolutely, Ashanti said without hesitation. Good, because you just did. I won't have nobody's careless ass antics fucking up my groove, Ashanti. Feel me? Yeah, Ashanti nodded. He didn't miss the threat in King's tone. Fuck it. We can't do much about it now other than damage control. It's only a matter of time before Shah puts this together, if he hasn't already. So the first thing we need to do is get Dumb and Dumber out of its reach. He pointed at Alonzo and Ashanti respectively. I got a bitch who stays down in Philly that they can crash with for a week or so until we sort this out. Lock him offered. Good. Get on it, King told him. Wait, I don't remember agreeing to go nowhere. If Shah want to get on it, then I'm going to stay right here. I ain't no coward. So we ain't trying to son you, but this is for your own good. You a working dude now, Zoe, and instead of encouraging you to keep at that, I'll let you get caught up in this bullshit, like him said sadly. This isn't a request, baby bro. Lakim placed his hand on Alonzo's shoulder. La, I love you for wanting to look out for me, but I'm not the same kid brother you used to send to stay with relatives whenever you went to war in the streets. I carry my own weight. So I know you're a tough nut, but I'm not sure if you're built for where this is about to go. Alonzo looked his brother dead in the eyes and spoke slowly and clearly so that there was no misunderstanding. I'm built for more than you even understand, big bro. I wasn't given the name Zoe Pound. I earned it. Thanks for the ride down, but I'll take the train back to Harlem. He walked off. Ashanti stood there looking confused. He wasn't sure if he should follow Alonzo or stay with King and lock in. He looked at King with questioning eyes. You know damn well you want to follow him, so go ahead, King told him. He watched as Ashanti jogged off to catch up with Alonzo. They were promising soldiers and would make more promising generals, but only when they outgrew the ignorance of youth. You believe that shit about the third dude being some nigga Zoe was locked up with? Lakim asked King once Alonzo and Ashanti had gone. Hell no, King said. Who do you think it was? King took a long pause. I have a theory, but I hope I'm wrong. 46. If there had ever been a shadow of a doubt in Animal's mind as to what Shy's true intentions were, seeing the massive scrapyard looming in the distance removed it. Before he even approached the gates, he could smell the stench of death reeking from the place. Shy meant to make the yard Animal's final resting place, and even knowing this didn't stop him from coming. His cell phone vibrated on the center console. Animal looked at the caller ID and hit ignore. Ashanti and Zoe had been taking turns blowing his phone up all day, but he hadn't answered any of their calls. The two young men had pledged their loyalties to Animal and their lives to his cause. For as noble as their selfless acts had been, Animal didn't fool himself. It was a fool's mission that he was on, and the chances of survival were slim to none. They were good soldiers, but too young to die, so he left them and made other arrangements. Animal pulled up to the high gate and flashed the headlights on the rental twice, as he had been instructed to. A few seconds passed, then Animal heard the engine that powered the automatic gate roar to life. Gravel crunched under the tires of the rental as Animal drove slowly into the yard. Though it was nearly pitch black, he could see figures moving around in the shadows. There had to be at least a dozen of them, given he absently rubbed the grip of one of the pretty bitches for comfort. Behind him, closed, letting him know he had reached the point of no return. Every few yards, Animal would see the flick of a flashlight, letting him know which way to go. By the time he had navigated the twists and turns of the scrapyard, he was so disoriented that he doubted he could find his way back out without having some assistance. After a while, the rows of cars opened up into a clearing that was brightly lit by the headlights of the ring of cars that formed a horseshoe around it. Sitting tied to a chair in the middle of the ring of light, like a shining angel of mercy, was the woman he had come to rescue, Gucci. Animal threw the car and parked so quick that it jerked forward. Ignoring the fact that he was surrounded by armed men who all wanted him dead, he rushed to Gucci's side. Baby, are you okay? They didn't hurt you, did they? Gucci looked up and strained her eyes to focus. Tayshawn, is that you? You shouldn't have came. They're gonna kill you. Don't worry about none of that shit, Ma. I'm gonna make sure you get out of here, I promise. Never have I saw a more touching scene. Shy stepped forward from the shadows. Instead of his usual business suit, he was dressed in jeans and Timberlands with a dark-colored hoodie. The tortured lover flies headfirst into danger to rescue his lady. He clapped his hands. Bravo! Animal looked up at Shy with red in his eyes. You piece of shit! He whipped one of the pretty bitches out and aimed it at Shy. I should blow your brains out for touching mine. You're welcome to try if you like, Shy said coolly. Suddenly, a dozen infrared lights winked to life around them. There were more beams than Animal could count, and they were all trained on Gucci's head like a crown of cherries. But I wouldn't if I were you. Animal kept the gun aimed at Shy. He wanted to shoot him so bad that his finger trembled on the trigger. One shot and his nemesis would finally be dead, but so would Gucci. Reluctantly, Animal lowered his weapon. Good boy, Shy smiled. Disarm this fool before he gets any big ideas. he said over his shoulder. Swan stepped from the darkness. His face was a mass of bruises and cuts from the beating Animal had put on him, but the smirk on his face remained intact. He took both guns from Animal, then checked them for any more concealed weapons. When he was sure that Animal wasn't hiding anything else, he leaned in and whispered, "When Shy gives me the order to clip you, I ain't gonna be as merciful as I was with Tech. I'm gonna kill you slow. Real slow." Swan punched him in the stomach, doubling him over, and dropped him when he brought both of the pretty bitches down on the back of his head. Animal saw the most beautiful stars before the ground slamming into his face dissipated his vision. The metallic taste of blood mixed with dirt filled his mouth. He braced his fist against the ground and pushed himself up, but the moment he tried to stand, he was overcome with a wave of dizziness, so the best he could manage was a kneeling position. He heard the crush of gravel under a boot and looked up expecting to see Swan, but it was Shy. The mighty Animal down on bended knee. Shy looked at him pitifully. "You have no idea how long I've been waiting to see this." The knot on Animal's head throbbed, but it was nothing compared to his wounded pride. Fighting against the pain, he got to his feet. "Don't get used to it, because you'll never see it again." "Doesn't matter, because I got it stored in here." Shy tapped his temple. "I can replay this movie anytime I want. You know," Shy began pacing in a tight circle around Animal, "we've never seen eye to eye, but I've always respected you. You're loyal and fearless. Had things played out differently, we might have been able to keep doing business together. But you got cocky." Animal laughed. "I didn't get cocky, Shy. I got tired. Tired of people like you who sit in your big houses getting fat while your soldiers die in the street. Tired of motherfuckers who have earned nothing, claiming everything. I'm tired of arrogant little pussies like you spoon-feeding real nigga shit and expecting us to smile and ask for a second helping. They call you the king of Harlem, but what kind of king puts innocent people in harm's way?" He nodded at Gucci. "One who is willing to do whatever it takes to hold on to his crown," Shy told him. "Watching my father and brother fall taught me one simple truth. He who is willing to go the furthest shall rule the longest. Pardon my arrogance, but I'd kill this bitch and 10 more that looked just like her to get a pesky nigga like you from out of my hair." "Spoken like a true Clark," Animal told him. "Aight, Shy. You got your prize. I'm at your mercy, so honor your word and let Gucci go." Shy raised an eyebrow. "Did you ever hear me agree to that?" "Don't play me, Shy. Your peoples promised that if I came quietly, you'd let Gucci go." "The word of my people ain't the word of the king. I think I'd sleep better if I washed this problem as a whole from the face of the earth. Don't worry, I'll make sure you two lovebirds are buried together." Animal laughed mockingly. "I kinda had a feeling you would pull a bitch move, so I came prepared. Before I die, I will see you laid low." Animal thrust his fist into the air. He waited for a few seconds, and nothing happened. So he did it again. Still nothing. Animal whipped his head back and forth frantically, scanning the darkness. "Lose something?" Shy asked with a sinister grin. He signaled someone behind him to step forward. Angelo and another man stepped forward, dragging a woman between them. Blood stained the front of her shirt, and it looked like her legs could barely support her. When she got closer, Animal could see the woman was none other than his insurance policy, Castro. She had been his last hope of him and Gucci making it out alive. "No," Animal said weakly. "Yes!" Shy said enthusiastically. "We found this little bitch hiding in here and armed with a rifle that could have done some real nasty damage had she ever had the chance to use it." "I tried, big homie," Castro mumbled through her bloodied lips. And you failed, Shy told her. Shy, keep this between me and you. Let these women go, Animal pleaded. Everyone must be held accountable for their actions. Ain't that what you was running around screaming when you was killing my people? Shy reminded him. If you play pussy, the blade opened Angela from temple to jaw. Face! He placed a gun to her chest. No! Animal screamed, but his voice was drowned out by the roar of the gun when Lo pulled the trigger. The impact of the bullet knocked Castro across the scrapyard and slammed her into a pile of junked cars. Even with the gaping hole in her chest, she was still on her feet and still holding her razor. She staggered forward, swinging the razor blindly, trying to get to Angelo. He fired another shot, then another, dropping Castro to her knees. Angelo came to stand over her with the gun to her forehead. Any last words? Animal tried to rush Shy, but was pounced by his henchmen. It took 4 of them to keep the struggling man from their boss. They eventually wrestled Animal down and tied his hands behind his back. You're dead, Shy. You're so fucking dead. Yeah. You sound like a broken record. Shy dismissed him. I want you to carve him up real nice before you let him die. Shy ordered someone who was hidden in the shadows. Just like a bitch, too scared to do his own dirty work. Nah, murder has never been my thing, so why would I even play at it when I have an expert on my team? Shy waved the man forward he had been talking to. Animal's eyes almost popped out of his head when the priest he had been talking to at the church emerged. He had shed his army jacket and jeans and was now dressed in full priest's robes. Let me introduce you to my executioner. Priest! You? Animal asked in disbelief. Priest shrugged. I told you I wasn't always a man of the cloth. He drew a gun from the folds of his robe. Animal felt dizzy. All he ever wanted to do was the right thing, but fate forced his hand to do wrong at every turn. As a result of his decisions, the kiss of death had touched everyone he loved. He felt defeated, like he had nothing left. In a last act of desperation, he rushed Priest to try to get through him to Shy. Being that his hands were bound, his charge was awkward. He dropped his shoulder and tried to hit Priest with everything he had. The older and more seasoned killer easily sidestepped the charge and grabbed Animal by his hair as he passed. Priest whipped Animal across the yard like a rag doll, sending him skidding across the ground. Animal tried to get to his feet, but Priest put him back down with a kick to the gut. He tried to get up again and was rewarded with another kick. This one knocked the wind out of him and stilled his rage. Don't make it harder on yourself, kid, Priest whispered to him. He dragged Animal by the hair back to where Gucci was sitting and tossed him at her feet. Then he produced a knife and approached Gucci. Please, don't! Gucci begged, as she watched the upraised knife. When it came down, she closed her eyes, expecting to meet her end. But instead, the knife only grazed her flesh when it cut through the ropes that had been binding her to the chair. Gucci spilled forward and landed on the ground beside Animal. He then cut Animal's bindings. The two lovers hugged each other tightly, knowing that it would be the last hug they ever shared in this life. Priest, we don't have time for your games. Just kill them and be done with it, Shy ordered. He underestimated Animal's resilience once, and it cost him soldiers and money. He didn't intend to make the same mistake twice. Priest glared at Shy. I am the wolf of the Clark family, not the lapdog, and you do well to remember that, little one. I take no pleasure in murdering the helpless. You'll have Animal's life, but it will be an honorable death. A real soldier deserves as much. Shy was angry, but he tried not to show it. He knew arguing with Priest was pointless because he lived by his own rules. Fine, just be done with it. Come by the house and collect your money when you're finished. Shy gathered his troops, and the entourage left the scrapyard. When Shy and his men had left the yard, Priest turned his attention back to the couple. They were kneeling, wrapped in each other's arms. Even wrapped in Animal's comforting embrace, Gucci couldn't stop trembling. "It's gonna be okay," Animal cooed in her ear. "I'm scared," she sobbed. "No need to be, Gucci. We'll be together again, in this life or the next," Animal promised. Gucci closed her eyes, preparing for the end, but Animal glared menacingly at Priest. He would look death in the face when it came for him. "So I guess this is God showing me how much he loves me again, huh?" Animal asked sarcastically. "No, this is man showing you the error of your ways." Priest gun. "I wish you'd listen to me. Now it's too late. Make your peace with God, children, for you shall soon sit with smoking blood, smiling like the cat who had swallowed the canary. To him, it was time to celebrate a long-awaited victory, but Shy's face wore a troubled expression. "What's good with everything that's happened?" Shy told him. "If that's the case, then why aren't you smiling? Shy, you've just gotten rid of a hell of a thorn in your side, so I'm trying to figure out why you're looking all sad instead of jumping for joy." "Swan, you know I've never taken pleasure in having people killed." "But you do it so well." Swan meant it as a joke, but Shy didn't laugh. "Come on, fam. You did what you had to do. It was either you or him. Animal had to die." "I know, but the girl..." Shy trailed off. "I just wonder if I could have handled the situation differently." In his heart, he wanted to let Gucci go, but killing her would send a message to any and all watching that Shy was willing to do whatever it took to hold on to his throne. 2 gunshots rang out from somewhere in the scrapyard. Swan shrugged. "Sounds like it's too late to worry about that now." 47. Frankie lay in the hospital bed at Kings County, nodding in and out of a drug-induced stupor. She kept telling the nurses that she didn't want to be sedated, but they told her it was for the pain. She just had a serious operation, and it would take some time for the wound to heal. Bess had cut her open and left her for dead, and she would have died if it hadn't been for Dina. While Frankie lay there knocking on heaven's door, she could remember hearing Dina's voice the whole time, assuring her that everything would be okay. It was Dina's voice that Frankie had held on to until the paramedics had gotten there. She'd treated Dina like a nuisance, but she turned out to be a godsend. When she got out of the hospital, the fence between her and Dina would be the first one she mended along the road of her new life. Frankie heard someone enter her room, and when she tried to turn her head to see who it was, she immediately regretted it, as pain shot through her neck when she almost dislodged the stitches the doctor had used to close her wound. "Who is that?" Frankie called out, deciding against trying to continue turning her head. "Hello," a soft voice answered. A young, light-skinned girl of about 17 stepped into Frankie's line of vision. She was holding a bouquet of flowers. "I'm sorry. I hope I didn't wake you." "Nah, when you're in as much pain as I'm in, sleep don't come easy." "Who are you again?" Frankie asked, as she had never seen the girl before. "Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Fatima, Cuddy's daughter." Frankie finished her sentence. As she really took a look at the girl, she saw the resemblance. Fatima had her mother's complexion, but her father's face. "Yeah, Cuddy is my dad," Fatima said, not knowing whether she should be proud or ashamed. "He sent these for you." She held up the flowers for Frankie to see. Frankie smirked. "That's Cuddy for you, always sending other people to do his dirty work. I guess you can set them wherever you find a space for them." Fatima set the flowers in the chair at the foot of Frankie's bed. "Listen, I don't really know what kind of relationship you have with my father, but I know what kind of a man he is, so I can respect your bitterness. But don't disrespect my father in front of me. For as foul of a nigga as he might be, the fact that he sent you flowers says you mean something to him. I'll get out of your hair now." Fatima turned to leave. Wait, he stopped her. I didn't mean to come across like a bitch. I'm sorry. It's nice to finally meet you, Fatima. Likewise, Fatima nodded. So how come old Cuddy sent you up here instead of coming himself? You know he loves a grand entrance. Frankie smirked. That he does, Fatima laughed. He's actually downstairs. He sent me up because he didn't think you wanted to see him, but he wanted to let you know that he was concerned. Tell your dad that I said thank you for the flowers, but plans won't buy him a ticket out of the doghouse. It's a good start, but I'm gonna need some time, Frankie said honestly. Fatima placed her hand over Frankie's reassuringly. Take all the time you need. It was nice meeting you, and get better soon. Fatima waved as she exited the hospital room. Frankie lay there looking at her flowers and contemplating her next move. This was the second time in less than a year that she had almost lost her life, and frankly, she was tired of playing the odds. It was time for her to get out of New York City and go back to the only place that had ever felt like home. She just hoped that Mama J would accept her back, considering the circumstances surrounding how they parted. Just as Cuddy had said, he made an attempt to put in extra time with Fatima when he'd called her expectedly that morning and asked about spending the day together. She was skeptical. In the 17 years she had known her father, keeping promises had never been high on his list of strong points. Still, she agreed just to have one more tally mark against him when he showed up. Or not. To her surprise, he was where he said he would be, when he said he would be there. Fatima was initially apprehensive, but ended up enjoying with her dad. He'd kicked off the morning by taking range, followed by lunch at a nice restaurant and a movie. Fatima hadn't resisted at the beginning of the date, but as she hung out with him, she realized her father was a cool-ass dude and more in tune with what she was going through than she'd given him credit for. One date couldn't repair the relationship, but it was a start. When he'd gotten word about what had happened to Frankie, Cuddy was distraught. His hidden feelings for her had made him overreact about the card game debacle, which caused a rift between them, but he still had love for Frankie. He was hesitant about asking Fatima to detour their date so he could see about Frankie, but she was surprisingly understanding. She had even offered to take the flowers upstairs in case Frankie didn't want to see him, and if she didn't, he couldn't say that he blamed her. He had been a real asshole to Frankie, but if she allowed him to change, he was going to make it right. Cuddy spotted Fatima coming out of the hospital. She wasn't carrying the flowers, so that was a good sign. He opened the door to the truck so he could get out and meet her halfway, and found his path blocked with a female. He didn't recognize her at first, but he placed her face as the girl who lived in Frankie's building. He opened his mouth to say hello, but his words froze in his throat when she pointed the gun at him. What the fuck are you doing? Cuddy asked her. Making everything right. You caused this shit, Dina said emotionally. Cuddy tried to reason with her. Shorty, whatever you're thinking, I can promise you that you're wrong. We were good together. We didn't need nobody. But then you came around with your broken promises of fast cash. Frankie was fooled, but I knew you were a snake from the moment I first laid eyes on you, Dina told him. You don't want to do this, Cuddy told her. The hell I don't. If Frankie hadn't been so caught up in your bullshit, then I might have had a chance to warn her. Tears ran down Dina's cheeks. You took her from the world, and now it's time for you to make your exit. There was a loud boom. Reflexively, Cuddy closed his eyes, waiting for the familiar burning of a bullet through his flesh. After a few seconds, the bullet still hadn't come, so he opened his eyes. Dina stood there, still pointing the gun at him. A small red dot appeared on her forehead, which eventually became a fountain of blood. She dropped, face first to the floor, dead as a doornail. Standing behind her holding a smoking gun was Fatima. What did you do? Cuddy looked at his daughter in shock. She was going to hurt you, and I just... Fatima began, but couldn't finish. This was the second time in less than a week that she had found herself staring at a dead body. Being so close to the hospital, It was only a few seconds before sirens could be heard in the distance. There wasn't enough time to run, and there was no story that Cuddy could think of to hide the obvious. "Give me the gun." He snatched the murder weapon from Fatima's hand. He immediately began to wipe the gun with his shirt, making sure to remove her prints. "What are you doing?" Fatima asked nervously. "Making up for 17 years of lost time." Cuddy fired another shot into Fatima's body to ensure that there was gunpowder residue on his hands when the police tested them. "No!" Fatima tried to snatch the gun back, but Cuddy held it out of her reach. Half a dozen police cars carrying a dozen police officers converged on their location. Cuddy placed the gun on the ground right before the police swooped in on him and cuffed him. "Why?" Fatima asked, with tears in her eyes as they dragged her father away in shackles. Cuddy looked over his shoulder. "When you have kids of your own, you'll understand. I love you, Fatima." Those were his last words to her before he walked roughly into the squad car.
Oh my gosh, bro. What is this nigga doing? Oh, yeah.
Epilogue.
He's driving, bro.
King James stood in the middle of the playground dressed in all black. The few members of his crew were also dressed in black. The similarities of what they had on hadn't been a coincidence. It had been in order. The night before, they had officially lost one of the realest cats alive for the second time. It had come as no shock to hear that Animal hadn't perished after the jailbreak. Animal was a much bigger part of the grand scheme than most understood, so King James knew it would only be a matter of time before he resurfaced, but he never imagined the circumstances or the fact that their destinies would overlap. If only Ashanti had connected them instead of keeping Animal's presence a secret, things could have played out different, and they'd be celebrating the murder of one of Shy's instead of mourning the loss of one of their own. When he looked at Ashanti, he saw the crushed look on his face. He knew that no amount of lecturing could teach him a harder lesson than the one Animal's death had just taught him. He lost his best friend. When Ashanti got word of what happened in the scrapyard, he was destroyed. He had a bad feeling when he was trying to reach Animal unsuccessfully, and when he'd gotten the news of his murder that morning from King James, his worst fears were confirmed. Fatima had been calling and texting him all day, but Ashanti never answered. For as bad as he needed to be close to her at that moment, he wouldn't let himself do it. She was supposed to be spending the day hanging out with her dad, and he didn't want his tragedy to taint their reunion. Ashanti had spent the better half of the day in his apartment, crying and drinking until he was numb. He couldn't wrap his mind around the fact that someone he had always looked at as invincible was no longer with them. Ashanti had always been a wayward soul with no real direction or purpose in his life. But that changed the moment Shy Clark had killed Animal. His new purpose in life was to whack Shy. There was so much going on inside his young mind at that moment that he felt like his head would explode if he didn't get it out. So he turned to his comrade, Alonzo. Alonzo sat on a crate, dressed in a black t-shirt and black Yankee fitted. He bobbed his head to the sounds of Animal's first mixtape bumping from someone's car speakers. He hadn't gotten a chance to spend much time around Animal, but he understood why the hood loved him. He was a cat who would live and die by what he believed in. Animal's loss was a tragedy, but what was more tragic was the stain it had left on Ashanti's spirit. Ashanti idolized Animal, and losing him for the second time killed off whatever youthful innocence that Ashanti had been holding on to. He had crossed the threshold, and nothing Alonzo said would convince him to turn back. All he could do was hold Ashanti down and try to make sure he didn't meet with the same unfortunate end as his predecessor. The first thing Animal could remember thinking was what the hell smelled like an old gym locker. He rolled off the army cot he was lying on and got into a position where he could better take stock of his surroundings. Animal blinked, trying to adjust his eyes to the darkness, and instead of fiery pits, he was greeted by the stained glass mural that he had stood before a few nights prior. He knew where he was, but wasn't sure how he had gotten there. "Glad to have you back with us," a voice called behind Animal. He turned and saw a priest sitting on the front pew. "You!" Animal snarled. He leaped from the cot and tried to attack Priest, but the shackle that went from his ankle to the floor tripped him, causing him to fall flat on his face. There's that mindless anger again. That's how you got here in the first place, Priest reminded him. What am I doing here and where's my lady? Animal asked hustilely. I'm here, baby, Gucci called from the aisle. She had traded her hospital gown and slippers for a sweatsuit and sneakers. The girl Animal had met during his first visit to the church was helping her down the aisle. She was still weak from the surgery, but moving around far better now that all of the different medications were out of her system. Are you okay? Animal asked, when she had finally reached him. I'm fine, she hugged Animal. They didn't hurt me. What the fuck is your game, Priest? Animal turned to him. This ain't about no game. This is about redemption, Priest told him. Shy's reasons for wanting you dead are petty. My reasons for wanting you alive go much deeper. I see something in you that I wish someone had seen in me as a young man, which is why I've given you a second chance at life. As soon as you're able, you and your lady are free to leave and start your lives over. To the world at large, you're dead now. I mean, really dead. Not like that fucked up job your buddies did a few years back. As we speak, there's a medical exam verifying your identities in some lab downtown. Animal and Gucci no longer exist. Animal looked at him suspiciously. Oh man, you must think I'm a fool. If it was that simple, then why the hell do you have me chained to the floor? What are your terms? That chain is to ensure that you sit still long enough to listen to what I have to say, and my terms are simple. As far as Shy is concerned, the two of you are dead and gone. You are gonna leave this beef alone and ride off into the sunset. I can't do that, Animal said. You've been given a pass. Take it and do with your life what you will, Kala added. Sweetie, where I'm from, we don't abandon our comrades. Even if I dip off now, Alonzo and Ashanti are marked for death for helping me. I can't have that on my conscience, Animal told her. Animal, I pulled you from the fire once, and there's no guarantee I can do it again, Priest told him. I'm not asking you to. I appreciate what you did getting me and Gucci out of there, but I can't turn away now. I gotta at least make sure Zoe and Ashanti are good before I can put all this behind me. Priest shook his head and smirked. You're determined to keep putting your life on the line until you eventually lose it, huh? They helped me, and I can't leave them for dead. Priest studied his face for a minute. So be it. If you're determined to tackle a king cobra, then I guess it's only right that I show you how to kill it. Priest, I don't want to sound ungrateful or anything, but why are you helping me? You know what Shy is liable to do to you if he finds out, don't you? Animal asked. Priest nodded. Indeed I do, but there's nothing he can do to me that I haven't already done to myself. Think of it as an old man trying to make his peace in the twilight of his years. He handed Animal an old photograph. Animal studied the photo, which was of a much younger priest with a woman and a small child. Upon closer inspection of the photo, he realized that the woman was his estranged mother, and the child cradled lovingly in the priest's arms was him. What the fuck is this? Some kind of trick? It's no trick. The photo is real. Then that means... Yes. Priest cut him off. You've grown into a fine young man, son, and every bit as dangerous as your dad. The beginning. This concludes the reading of Animal by Quan.
What the hell?
Copyright 2012 by Quan Foy. This book was read by Carrie Pipe.
Lord, bro. It must be an
This unabridged recording was published by arrangement with Cash Money Content, LLC, and was produced in 2012 by Buck 50 Productions, LLC, and Blackstone Audio Inc., which hold the copyright. Neither this recording nor any portion of it may be reproduced or used for any purpose without prior written authorization from Buck 50 Productions LLC and Blackstone Audio Inc. If you would like to obtain a complete catalog of our titles or our monthly update telling you about new releases, call 1-800-SAY-BOOK. That's 1-800-729-2665. Or visit our website at www.blackstoneaudio.com. Thank you.
Yeah, bro, that book ended fucked up. They didn't even give you no good ending. It gotta be an Animal 2 or something. That was not a good ending. A lot of these books been ending like, I think he end the books like that so he can write another book to it or something. Because they ain't been endings. They've been like to be continued endings. Damn near. Without them saying it's to be continued. But it's like, it gotta be more to the story than it just ending like that. Like, come on, bro. You ain't gonna just end the story like that. That's his daddy. He supposed to kill him. He gotta go back and save his partners. Come on, man. We're gonna look and see if it's an Animal 2. It gotta be an Animal 2 or something. I ain't gonna just believe that that's it. That can't just be it. It gotta be more to that story. Yeah, so we gotta look for an Animal 2 because it gotta be more to the story than that. We ain't gonna just say that's that. Nah, it gotta be more to that story. Stop, man, bro. What? Man, come on, man. Come on, man. Telling me ain't no more to the story? Huh? Shit, then that be confusing too. There's another part to the story that he called it something else. Like, how you know that's the continuation of the story? That was a good one, though. That was a good one. I said, talking like it be so much freaking going on in this book. There wasn't nobody really fucking in that book neither. It's been alright, get old books. Ain't been too much fucking going on like I thought. Like, let's get it on. Let's get it on. Get it on the floor. Get it on the floor. Alright, we're gonna do better with the title selection. We'll try to find us a freak. My bad, y'all. My bad. I was just saying though, ain't no way the book ended. My bad, y'all. My bad. I was just saying though, ain't no way the book ended like that, bro. Like, it had to be like a part 2, and sure enough, it's an Animal 2. So we're gonna start on part 2 of the book because the way that just ended, I was like, what is going on, bro? Where's part?
Blackstone Audio and Buck 50 Productions present Animal 2, The Omen, by Quan. This book is read by Carrie Hype. Dedicated to my mother, who constantly watches over me and guides these gifted hands. Love you, Brenda. My wife, Charlotte, and my children, Alexandria, Nija, and Star,
Damn, I hope I make it to
who
the
all
spot.
gave so much of themselves as I was writing this novel.
Man.
When I retreated to the furthest corners of my head to produce Animal 2, they held things together in the real world. We suffer together and prosper together. Such is the makeup of who we are. My love for you guys is unconditional. Hashtag Team Foy above all. Quan. Prologue. If you asked anyone about Rick Jenkins, most of them would likely have the same opinion of him. A lion, a cheat, a scumbag, and all-around loser. That had been the story of his life. Losing, at least until recently. Rick was a grifter who made his money playing the con game. His most recent scam was bogus apartment rentals. He would run ads on sites like Craigslist, claiming to be a realtor for a luxury apartment complex. He had a buddy who worked in maintenance at the complex, so gaining access to empty apartments for showing was easy. Rick would even go as far as giving people their keys in exchange for cash up front. By the time the renters tried to move in and realized they'd been duped,